Are your beauty, hygiene, and even household products, including your furniture and carpet, causing you to get sick? Are they the reasons why you are experiencing asthma, high blood pressure, chronic headaches, hormonal imbalances, and maybe even putting you at risk for cancer? That's right. These products, our everyday products in our household, may be harboring chemicals that are either causing endocrine disruption or even carcinogens, which are cancer causing substances. And the list is pretty long, from shampoos to deodorants to hair oils to nail polish to our synthetic hair. And this is the big one we're going to talk about today. They can be the source of why we're getting sick, including our self-care regimens. If you haven't realized it before, come closer. You are a walking, talking miracle. But don't worry, you do not need to live in a bubble, nor do you need to relocate to another planet. Because honestly, the problem ain't the planet. We couldn't wait to do this topic, but we wanted to make sure that we gathered all the information necessary to give you a complete understanding of our potential risk when it comes to all of these products that we are constantly surrounded by and use on a daily basis. We wanted to make sure that we gather all the information necessary so you can make the right decisions for you and your family. Honestly, you guys, this is a personal journey for me too. So I'm going to give you some insight on some of the things that I have done to reduce my personal risk when it comes to some of these products, and also some of the things that nobody's really talking about as much. We're going to bring it up here, and of course all the controversies that you have heard about and seen on your tickety talk, we're going to bring those up too. So we thank you guys for watching, and once again we thank you so much for being a part of our support system, and don't forget to do what? Click subscribe. Just kidding, y'all. This is my natural hair. But you know what? Do we know what this is made out of? What it is infusing into our scalp? Well, this is why we're going to talk about this topic today. You know, this has been a journey not for just everyone else, but it's a journey for me as well. I like to have nice hairstyles. I like to have convenient hairdos. I like to put on a little bit of makeup, a little bit of lip gloss, and go about my day. But honestly, we need to be more conscious buyers and to know exactly what we're putting into our body, from our hair products to even our eyelash that we add on. Some of y'all may probably shade me and say, girl, you need some. But the problem is we can't really find or trust the products that are on the market. And honestly, it's becoming to feel like, especially when it comes to Black women, that they just don't care about us, because these products have been harming us for years. And this is not a secret, you guys. This has been very well known. But there are some things that we can do to regain our power and our decision making and be what? Conscious consumers. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk more about the Mielle situation, because I know that's a brand that's dear to us. And for those who may be trying to figure out Mielle, that sounds familiar. You probably will recognize the packaging if I held it up to you. But there's a lot more to that story that we need to be aware of before we make up our minds. I'm going to try to give you the 411 on what's going on with that situation. But before we get into Mielle and what the really origin of the intent to sue issue is, we're going to need to talk about the root problem. And the root problem is carcinogens and endocrine disruptors. So let's start off with endocrine disruptors. And throughout this video, I am going to pop up every now and then a couple of the endocrine disruptors, because if anyone is like me, I'm a visual learner. So I need to not just hear it, I need to see it as well. So we're going to pop up some of the endocrine disruptors so that at least you know to look on the label and be familiar with it. And sometimes it will require a little bit more research, because a lot of these companies aren't being transparent about what exactly is in their products. And I know some of you may be asking, what about the endocrine disruptors in the food? And we're going to get to that, but probably on a different topic, because there's so much to talk about. I know I don't have but so much of your time. So I'm going to try to jam pack this into as much as we can, so at least you get a little bit information that you can run with, right? We going to write it down. Y'all going to run with it. Get it? All right. So let's get into endocrine disruptors and what exactly are they and how do we get exposed to them? So what are endocrine disruptors? Endocrine disruptors are chemicals that are either man-made or naturally occurring. Yes, there are naturally occurring endocrine disruptors. It's a myth that it's all man-made, but the far majority are man-made and they interfere with our body's function, our physiology, by either mimicking, blocking, or interfering with the actions of our own hormones. And so, as you guys know, hormones are pretty much messengers throughout the body. They control the everything that we do in our body is regulated by some type of hormone, whether it's our thyroid that regulates our metabolic rates, or whether it's our gut hormones that tell us when we're hungry and when it's time to eat. Or whether it is our reproductive hormones that tell us when it's that time of the month. But even our hygiene products that we use on our monthly basis may be a problem. So the endocrine system regulates all of our hormones. So whether it's controlling our adrenal glands, our thyroid hormone, our gut, our brain, there are so many hormones within our body that are actively working as messengers to help our body kind of be normal and regulate on a daily basis. So these are things we don't actively think about, but they're definitely working on our behalf. And oftentimes we also don't think about our detoxifying organs, which we're going to tap into a little bit later. So how do we get exposed to these endocrine disruptors? Well, we get exposed to them through every access in our body. So if you think about how do things gain access to our body? Through our skin, which is the largest organ. Anything you apply to your skin should be the most critical decision that you make on a daily basis. It is the largest organ in the body and it absorbs almost everything. It has the ability to block out a few things, but almost everything we put on our body will be absorbed to some degree. And when we say skin, don't forget your scalp is included in that. So when we talk about how do endocrine disruptors gain access, we're talking about not just the skin, but what about hair? On an average of 16 to 20 times per minute, we take in that good air. So we can inhale also chemicals that can disrupt our body's function, as well as we can what? Digest it, whether it's our water or through our food. So water, we're talking about chemicals that are coming through our piping systems, and through our food, we're talking about pesticides and packaging can be risk factors for us being exposed to unwanted chemicals. And what's the major chemical that we all need to be aware of? You got it, plastic. I'm sure you've heard about plastic and how it's disrupting our entire environment, from our ground and our nutrients in the ground to these excess, to our excess trash that we can't really recycle. Did you guys know that only a small percentage of the plastic that we recycle actually get recycled and reused? Yes, you guys, it's kind of really disappointing, but it's not an indication for you to stop recycling. We have to continue recycling, but perhaps there are other things we need to do to make sure that the products we are recycling are actually be putting to use and we stop the production of this additional plastic because it's not helping us. If we can't maximize what we're already using, then perhaps we shouldn't be producing more. And it's destroying our seafood, you guys. It is strangulating our oceanic environment. It is killing the plants. It is killing the fish. And ultimately, when that happens, because we're at the top of the food chain, it ultimately affects us. So there are some major endocrine disruptors that we have already started to hear more about, and some that are gaining our attention. And so when we hear about flame retardant, that sounds good, right? Something that is less likely to become inflamed or is less flammable. But the problem is some of these flame retardants are so harmful to us. The flame may even be better. Okay. And I'm just kidding with that. Flame is not good either. But you know what I'm saying? Like our solution is making our health worse. And then, a lot of us have been really paying attention to the PFAS chemicals, those that may be lining our juice containers even. Well, I'm not a big juice drinker, but for those of us who are still chug-a-lugging, I do like beet juice actually. And I do like aloe vera, which is on the list too. Y'all, there's a lot going on. So we're getting much better at recognizing certain types of endocrine disruptors like bisphenol. So we're starting to look at our plastic containers. But there is another endocrine disruptor that we can easily get rid of, you guys. Perchlorate. So that term itself may not sound familiar to you guys, but if I say explosives and fireworks, that may sound familiar, right? So one of the easy ways that we can minimize our exposure and the destruction of the earth is by minimizing our use of these pyrotechnic options, including our gender reveals, you guys. There's no reason for us to have our private fireworks during the holidays. Let's just gather at the major events, one-time deal, and not have these continuous explosives going off in the neighborhoods, which is not only just a noise pollution, but it is actually an air pollutant to us because what goes up must come down. So before I go on, as I mentioned, there are some naturally occurring endocrine disruptors which we're going to touch on briefly, but the far majority of them are caused by man-made substances. You guys, we have created as mankind over 85,000 new chemicals, and 1,000 of those could potentially be endocrine disruptors. According to the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, we are responsible for the far majority of these endocrine disruptors that do exist. So that means we have the potential to make a change, right? Even though there are naturally occurring endocrine disruptors such as phytoestrogens. So phytoestrogen has the root word estrogen in it, which is familiar to many of us. Why? Because it is one of our primary reproductive hormones. And so that in of itself is not alarming, but phytoestrogens are derived from our food products and can occur in certain types of plants. So phytoestrogens can be found in some of our more favorite food products and commonly used food products such as soybeans and garlics and flaxseed and sesame seeds, which also have other types of health benefits that we do endorse. And so it's a matter of taking this information and assessing your lifestyle. So are you at risk for having excessive unopposed estrogen? Have you had that discussion with your primary care doctor or perhaps your gynecologist? Then you may be someone that needs to be mindful of these types of food products. Are you at risk for or have cancer or had cancers that are responsive to certain types of hormones? So this is how we incorporate this information. There has been scientific proof, according to the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, that there are links of endocrine disruptors to conditions such as attention deficit disorder, abnormal puberty, preterm birth, reproductive issues, abnormal immunity, or a dysfunctional metabolism. So it's time for us to really pay attention to these issues, right? And we can certainly do better collectively. Now, let's talk about products that may even do worse than endocrine disruption, but actual carcinogenic products. Carcinogens are substances that can be potentially cancer causing. So these are the ones we really need to pay attention to, right? And so let's talk about some of the most common ones that we're exposed to or common issues that we're exposed to. So let's start with the ones that are closest to us, our clothing. So as you guys know, having clothing that's made out of natural products is very expensive. And so it led to this market of rapid producing man-made substances that are used for our clothing. Natural materials that can be used for clothing. Let's review them because we probably have forgotten them by now. So that includes our linens, our cottons, our wools, our silks. Those are examples of naturally occurring materials that are used for clothing. Now, they're probably, if you think about the types of clothes that you may have gotten with those types of natural materials, they're more expensive, right? And so there was a demand for cheaper clothes, for faster production of clothes that led to the use of man-made chemicals. So does polyester sound familiar? Does polyurethane sound familiar? And this is probably the two more common man-made materials that are found in our fashion-forward clothing. So we liked our little bodycon outfits and our little spandexy outfits. You throw on a nice little summer dress that's made purely out of polyester. And you guys, these products are very harmful. Polyester, polyurethane, doesn't alarm you, right? Because it just sounds like some other chemical that we're not familiar with, and we don't quite understand the potential of these chemicals. But if I were to say that you're wearing petroleum, that doesn't quite sound appeasing, right? Petroleum. We know that word, and we know petroleum is not great for our health and can be linked to cancer. Similarly, with even our shampoo that we use in our hair, we have to be mindful of the chemicals in our shampoo. So some of our very popular brands, which I'm not going to call out on this episode, but I may call out at another time. We just don't have the legal protection to do so yet. But some of our very common shampoos that are probably in most of your bathrooms currently have chemicals that are potentially harmful for us in general, are harmful for us when we are pregnant. And so chemicals like sodium chloride. Does this sound like a big deal, right? And sodium chloride is in a lot of our dandruff type shampoos, which can be linked to things like high blood pressure. And there are other chemicals like aqua, which is found in some of our common shampoos that has been linked to cancer. And there are other chemicals that we may not necessarily recognize, like tocopherol acetate, right? Doesn't sound familiar at all, but that is essentially vitamin E. And so if you're pregnant, products that contain tocopherol acetate are not products that you should be using. As much as this is an adult platform, I want us to be mindful that the same products we're talking about today are products that could potentially harm kids. And what are they? Smaller in size, which means the amount of toxicity that they are experiencing is way greater than a larger size adult with much more mature organs. So keep that in mind. And for the pregnant women, also keep it in mind that whatever you absorb has the potential to cause harm, either obvious harms like malformations or not so obvious harms where you're trying to figure out why isn't my child developing normally, right? So some things may be a lot more subtle and maybe a lot harder for us to connect the dots. But I'm hoping today that we'll at least get everyone thinking a little bit more about what we use. So that's a basic insight on our endocrine disruptors. But you guys, where I really want to lean in today is these products. This is really where we're going to lean into today. Okay. Now, many of us have had that situation when we've had a great hairstyle and almost immediately, or maybe within the first week, we're starting to do this. Okay, you guys, it's time for us to pay attention to the signals our bodies are sending out. And I know it's really hard because many of us like the convenience of having braided hair, like the convenience and ease of our crochet hair, or putting on a quick wig for the weekend, you guys. I know these are the things that we look forward to that make our lives easier and much more affordable because actually having things like human hair or even doing our own hair doesn't give us the look we're looking for, doesn't give us that extra pizzazz. And perhaps we need to talk more about that. But also, these decisions, you guys, are putting our lives at risk. And we love the fact that, especially the Kanekalon here, has that real naturally appearing to our more thicker textured hair as Black women. But there is a problem with these products. Let's talk about it. Thankfully, now there are actual official scientific articles that are coming out discussing this particular issue. There is actually one that was recently published at last year, at the middle of last year, that talks about carcinogenic materials in synthetic braids and unrecognized risk of hair products for Black women. Now, you guys know that recently we've talked about the hair straighteners and the potential cancer-causing chemicals that are in them. Now we have to be concerned about our braided hair. And even though we're saying braided hair, we're really talking about all synthetic materials, right? Include your eyelashes in them because those are synthetic too. But everything that we do with our scalp, whether it is braiding our hair, throwing on a wig, or doing some crochet, we're talking about the entire group of synthetic hair that we use. Even our little ponytail may be causing us to have some exposures. So thankfully, we're starting to see the research that's looking at this information. In this particular study, it has mentioned that even though currently the beauty industry, the hair industry is a billion-dollar industry. It's predicted to continue to rise in just 2028, so the Olympic year. It's estimated to be a multi-billion dollar industry. So it's time for us to have some say in what products we're putting in our hair and to hold these companies accountable because they have the potential to produce healthier and safer hair products. If they have the ability to produce the unsafe hair products, then they have the ability to produce safe hair products. I'm going to talk about at least one company that is starting to make a difference for Black women on their own, but it's really hard to scale on your own. So they're going to need our support one way or another. So the problem with synthetic hair is that it contains monocrylic fibers, and monocrylic fibers contain two well-known cancer-causing substances, acrylonitrile and vinyl chloride. So acrylonitrile, according to the EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, can cause cancer in humans. However, the National Institute of Cancer has linked vinyl chloride to several cancers, including leukemia, lymphoma, brain, liver, and lung cancers. Now, they are actually doing scientific work to quantify the amount of exposure we have, but it's a lot, you guys. If you think about these, even though they are maybe coated in the synthetic hair and maybe in small amounts in the hair, the fact that we utilize these hairstyles for 4 to 6 weeks and some of us a little bit longer, that continuous exposure accumulates in the body and becomes a very significant amount. So this is why this is very important. And some of us have tried things like using acetic acid. Okay, I've been on that ship too and ran with that bus, but I will tell you, I've always kind of questioned, who said this even works? You guys, I tried to fit into one episode, but I absolutely couldn't. There's so much more to even talk about. There's going to be a part 2 for sure, and maybe even a part 3, so that we can cover all the material that's necessary. For this week only, we're going to post part 1, part 2, and part 3, period. And so make sure you check back. We're going to talk about, for hairstylists, what they need to know, how to protect your health, what methods actually work to reduce the absorption of these harmful chemicals. Check back. So much to talk about, y'all. That being said, I'm Dr. T, the hand behind the handle of Healthy Bum Club right here on YouTube, giving you all the 411. And I'm also the hand behind the handle of Healthy Bum Club on Instagram and on Fanbase. We thank you guys for joining us. I hope I have enlarged your territory of knowledge today so that you can make better decisions for you and your family. And we hope to see you guys when? Next episode. I'm about to take this off, you guys.